They were the heroes from the future, teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse.
Welcome to the Legion Clubhouse. I am Stephen Schleicher.
And I'm Matthew Peterson.
And here's an interesting thing that's happening in this series with the Legion. As we found out at the end of last episode, the Tales of the Legion of Superheroes, the Legion gets their own backup stories in Adventure Comics. So going forward, all of our Legion stories happen in Adventure Comics. Until they get their own standalone series, but, you know.
At one point they switch over to action, but yeah.
Yeah, or at least for the next four episodes.
8
We're
years?
all in Adventure Comics. So here's the cool thing that happens in Adventure Comics 301. Last time we talked that the Legion of Superheroes starts to coalesce. They really start to be a team. They're having their own team stories. We're starting to build upon things that have happened in the past with the reintroduction and the quote-unquote curing of Mon-El. Superboy kind of gets pushed off to the side a little bit, and everyone else is allowed to grow. In Adventure Comics 301, we get to see a lot about these characters. Not only do we start to see reintroductions of the characters and what planet they're from and what their origin stories are, the roster starts to develop in Adventure Comics 301. Let's find out, Matthew, what happens in this issue.
Adventure Comics number 301, The Secret Origin of Bouncing Boy. Published October 1962. Written by Jerry Siegel with art by John Forte. A group of applicants hears the real story of how Bouncing Boy gained his powers and his spot in the Legion of Superheroes.
This is one of the greatest episodes ever.
Why is that?
Well, because it introduces, if not the, one of the most iconic Legion members. The Legion member...
Is it Lester Spiffany?
It is not Lester Spiffany.
Lester Spiffany shows up. This issue takes place. Not to step on your story here, Matthew, of the greatest non-Legion member of all time, but it's Legion Initiation Day. It's time to pick a new Legion member, and suddenly this rocket comes out of nowhere, and this rich kid comes down and goes, "I'm Lester Spiffany. Here's some diamonds. Sign me up into your little club. I got things to do." And they're like, "No one." I think it's Cosmic Boy who's like, "How dare you, sir? No one can buy their way into the Legion of Superheroes." Smacks the gems out of his hands and sends him crying.
Goodbye, Lester. It hasn't been nice meeting you.
Again, there are a lot of really cool characters like Lester Spiffany, who, if they were really thinking, like every 5 years when they're doing new member inductions, Lester Spiffany would show up trying to find another way of weaseling his way into the Legion of Superheroes.
I don't know. Lester Spiffany is kind of a jerkwad.
Well, but that's the thing. He becomes that comic relief of everyone's like, "Oh, great, here comes Lester Spiffany again."
Yeah, I think they did that later on with Rent Houston, and to some degree, Polar Boy fits that mold. Because he never stops trying, even when he's rejected 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. So go back to your story, why this is the greatest issue of Legion of Superheroes ever.
Well, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
But
go back and tell us why. This is the most interesting Adventure Comics 301 of all Adventure Comics 301.
Exactly. There are 3 reasons. First and foremost, for the very first time, they try and give us a comprehensive Legion roster.
Yes, they do.
Not everybody, but nearly everybody who's appeared and does their little one-shot shows up. This has Chameleon Boy. This has Invisible Kid, Colossal Boy. It has everybody with the exception of Starboy, who is still kind of off in his little...
boy, waiting there for you.
Starboy. He's off in his little Starboy realm. They'll get to him eventually. But secondly, we get Legion tryouts, which we have seen before.
Right, with Supergirl and Brainiac. But that was not really a tryout because essentially a meteor came crashing down and Brainiac saved Supergirl's life, and so they were both allowed in.
And it's not much of a test. One boy and one girl part is no longer in play.
Right.
because only one person will be chosen from this team. And the second thing, this is a minor continuity point, but it's important. We learned for the first time that a Legionnaire cannot have powers that are given by mechanical means.
Right. So there's one kid who shows up and he goes, you can call me Star Boy or a Storm Boy.
Storm Boy.
And he has the power to create storms. And so he just raises his hand up to the sky and instantly it starts raining and pouring.
Yep.
And Cosmic Boy's like, hey, man, I saw you reach into your pocket. Let's see what you got in there.
What are you doing with your hand in your pants there, dude? What? And then this is the best part. Cosmic Boy, rather than send him off on his own like he did with Lester Spiffany, calls in his enforcer, and Triplicate Girl triplicates and gives him a 3-sided bum rush, which is perfect. Get out. We don't want your ilk in our club, you phony.
Here's the thing, though, Matthew. This, even though we get to see a Legion tryout in this issue, there is not a Legion member that joins the club in this issue.
That is very true.
It's kind of left as a cliffhanger because part of this initiation as you're doing your test is for you to hear how other Legion members got into the Legion of Superheroes. And I think this is the third thing that makes this story great for you.
That is correct, because the Legionnaires who want, the would-be Legionnaires are treated to the story of how Charles Foster Tane, the bouncing boy, became a Legionnaire.
Rosebud.
Plastic fluid.
Okay, so I'm going to say this because you and I have gone back and forth over the years on this.
We have.
I do not think that Bouncing Boy is a terrible hero. I do not think that Bouncing Boy is a bad Legion of Superheroes member. I actually think the power of bounce is pretty cool, especially if you're going to do a fastball special kind of thing, right? Get Colossal Boy to swing you down, bat you like a rubber ball down the hallway and take out the bad guys. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
What I think is the lamest thing in the world is how Bouncing Boy got his powers. Now, swallowed by a cosmic whale and you get your powers that way, I'm fine. Injected into a microwave oven by your scientist father and you get your powers that way, totally fine. But if you're too stupid to know the difference between a bottle of secret plastic fluid formula and a soda, there's something really wrong with you.
Yeah, but it's lucky the clothing he was wearing is made of a stretchable fiber.
So, man, if people don't know the origin story, you start to tell the story, and I will interject with, and I started to swallow this. That will be my that will be my Bouncing Boy contributions to this episode.
Bouncing Boy was hired by a brilliant scientist to deliver his instant super plastic fluid to the Science Council.
Yay, I got a job.
But along the way,
there's a space wrestling match. I better go.
He was distracted by wrestling.
Not just wrestling, giant robot wrestling.
Right, robots versus wrestlers. And he stopped to watch the robot warriors do their robot war and bought himself a sody pop.
Yeah. And then he goes on to
sody pop.
And then he starts to explain how these robots all function. How they have 4 different people controlling them. And unexpectedly, as he reaches for his bottle of soda pop, this soda pop sure tastes awful. Oh, no wonder. It isn't soda. I'm drinking the super plastic fluid by mistake. Okay, now, for as long as it takes you to... Now, I know we've all done this, right? Where you reach for what you think is an iced tea, and it turns out to be like raspberry soda, something you totally don't expect. And you instantly are like, blah, blah, right? For as long as Bouncing Boy Chuck Tane is sitting there going through, wait a minute, this isn't soda? Wait a minute, why am I still drinking this? Wait a minute, why am I still drinking this? I mean, it's like 10 seconds of him guzzling the secret plastic fluid. I'm sorry, the super plastic fluid.
Chuck is one of those guys who, if you give him a soda, will down the whole soda at once and then burp for like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And think it's hilarious.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's maybe a taste delay, because here's something that happened to me. I don't drink chocolate milk, right? Because once upon a time in school, I opened up a chocolate milk and I was very thirsty and I started to drink it very quickly. And about 3 seconds in, I realized, oh my gosh, this chocolate milk is sour.
Oh.
And I've never drank chocolate milk since.
Right.
But I didn't sit there and go, as I was drinking it, going, hey, this tastes funny. Why am I drinking this? Oh my gosh, this milk is still sour. I'm still drinking this.
It's okay. Here's
I know what it is, but the way it's structured in this story makes this a horrible origin story.
That's the thing. There are worse origin stories out there. But I can agree with you that it does not make Chuck look like the brightest bulb at the bottom of the barrel. And when he immediately, swells up like Violet Beauregard,
it's a good thing he's wearing that stretchy fiber,
starts bouncing back and forth, you kind of wonder if, I don't know. I really believe that this story was written intentionally to create a character with super ridiculous powers and yet somehow still try to show what he is capable of, what it is that he can bring to the table.
Right. So here's my take on this, and I totally agree with you, because as we've been talking from the very beginning, the Legion of Superheroes is all about inclusion. So, even from the very start, you have a female who is an integral part of the Legion of Superheroes, helping make their decisions, is the leader of the team, comes up with great solving things. You have kids from all over the universe who are members of the Legion of Superheroes, including aliens, 2 of them, that are definitely not human looking. You've got a guy with things coming out the top of his head, and another one who's a descendant of somebody totally evil. But you don't got no fat kids on this team.
You do now.
And I think that this... And, they're probably not being super subtle with this, but doesn't matter if you're thin or fat, or if you've got red hair, or you're pretty, or you're ugly. If you have a contribution, you are certainly welcome.
I think that's important. That is an important lesson to learn. And I've said this before. Bouncing Boy gets rejected from the Legion based on the ridiculousness of his powers.
Right.
But in this story, he shows his tenacity and refuses to be beaten and refuses to stop fighting crime in his own bouncy little way. Yeah,
because when he goes to the tryouts, they basically laugh at him and go, your powers, it's a bouncing power. And they're not making fun of him because he's fat. They're making fun of him because it's like, we see no real use for anyone with a bouncing power.
Right. And that is actually a flashback to, I think, Action 276, where he first appears.
And he's bouncing, he's like, ta-da. Yeah.
Yeah, Supergirl and Brainiac get in instead, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think he was actually a member at that time.
No, he was not a member in his first appearance, because in his first appearance, he was rejected. He was rejected, okay. Violet was rejected, and Sunboy were rejected.
Okay.
Because that was when they brought in Supergirl and Brainiac and one boy and one girl every year that quickly went by the wayside.
So even though he has been rejected, he still thinks he's valuable, and he's going to do everything he can to prove that this stretchy power that he has, this bouncing power that he has, can be useful, like bouncing a cannonball off his chest if it comes shooting his way, which really wasn't any of a danger, but that's okay. Or if someone has electric powers and they're zapping everyone left and right, and you can use your inflatable powers, your bouncing powers to take him out, because bouncing powers counteract electricity.
This is another example of comic book science in play.
Yeah.
When you're off the ground.
Oh, sure. No.
Grounded.
But it almost comes off as, because he has quote unquote plastic powers, he's insulated from the man that's shooting electric rays.
He actually says that I knew that I wouldn't be grounded because I was in the air, but to some degree, I think that's true. They never really established.
No, if he's in the air, if he's in the air, the electricity's not going to hurt him.
The thing, though, is they never really established whether he turns to rubber or just inflates. They say that he feels spongy at one point, and I'm like, way too much information.
So
seriously.
is it ever? So this is my big question as I go in and start to do comic book history and everything, because at this time there is another stretchy character in the DC universe in the form of Elongated Man, who drinks Gingold or Gingold or however you want to pronounce it.
Gingold, I believe.
It's an extract, and it's really weird with Elongated Man because he was essentially drinking an off-the-shelf soda that had this in there, and the extract is what caused him to stretch, although no one else had achieved elastic powers from that, just him.
He discovered that, I believe that the term, and I don't think it's a particularly pleasant and useful term any longer, but the India rubber men who used to be in the circus and would be like double jointed and pretend to be stretchy.
Yeah.
All drank Gingold soda.
Okay. You call it Gingold?
I call it Gingold. Okay. You could call it Gin Gold, but that seems really hard to say.
I don't know. I'm drinking gin and juice, and that's not too hard to say. It goes
well, yeah,
smooth.
but you can't have a soft G and a hard G in the same word. It's Ginger Grant, not Ginger Grant.
Right. But the question is, and then something that I thought, and this is probably a retcon from way in the future, but this brilliant scientist who came up with the superplastic formula, isn't it derived from Gingold or Gingold?
Way down the line, yes.
Okay.
It is, and I want to say that that's something that isn't really ever revealed in a story so much as somebody mentioned it in like the Who's Who in the DC universe. It may be derived of Gingold, but
that's what I thought, is that somehow you had basically reinvented this new Coke formula that had been lost for thousands of years. And that's what he was trying to rush off to the science factory when Bouncing Boy, or Chuck, at this time he's just Chuck, decides to take a swig from it. And not just a swig, he downs the whole bottle.
The problem with that theory is that Gingold is a popular soft drink in 1960. By 2062, it shouldn't taste like doo-doo. It should be, But yeah, Gingold actually appeared about 2 years before this story. The first appearance of Elongated Man was Flash 112. And in Flash 112, he explains that the Gingold is the secret to his stretchy powers.
Yeah. So in Adventure Comics number 300, we started to get planets of origin for all of the Legion members. In 301, now we're starting to get origin stories for our members, or more complete origin stories for our members. And I think it is kind of interesting that the first one that we really dive deep into their origin story is Bouncing Boy.
Yeah, and that's kind of, when people talk about the Legion, there are two things they talk about. They say, oh my God, there's 1 million members and I can't keep them all straight. And then they say they're all 50s corny, weird stories like Bouncing Boy. And while that's not entirely true, Bouncing Boy is emblematic of the Legion in a lot of ways. And I think that the success of the Legion is based on whether the goofier future concepts like Bouncing Boy, like the upside down rocket ship that's clearly bigger on the inside, all of these things that come into play that are just kind of wacky, if those are out of fashion, then the Legion is out of fashion.
Yeah.
When comics are accepting, like in 2005, the Wade Legion run, there was a lot of really wild, weird, inventive, crazy stuff going on in comics. And all of a sudden the Legion was cool again.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a theory that I have.
Yeah, it's interesting. You did mention one thing that it was always troubling me in the early stories of the Legion of Superheroes. As they're going into their Legion clubhouse, I mean, throngs of kids are just lining up outside going, oh, we want your autograph. You guys are rock stars. Sleep with me, Cosmic Boy. That kind of stuff.
None of that stuff actually happens.
And they all go inside and they're like, drop the force field on these MFers. And so they drop the force field and you see the kids on the outside like shaking it. And it's the size of like a telephone booth. And yet clearly inside, there's like rooms, museums, conference tables.
Yep. It's bigger on the inside. Gallifreyan technology.
Well, I was wondering, when did Doctor Who come out?
1963.
Oh.
After this story.
Maybe somebody owes Jerry Siegel a little bit of compliments there.
I don't think that Jerry Siegel invented it's bigger on the inside.
Well, Okay, then it's John Forte, who we've said doesn't know how to draw anything, right? Oh my God! Drop the force field. There's giant teenagers out there trying to get in.
They're 40 feet tall. Oh my word!
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/major spoilers. Adventure Comics number 302, Sun Boy's Lost Powers. Published November 1962. Written by Jerry Siegel with art by John Forte. Without his powers, Sun Boy is desperate to prove his worth. To what lengths will he go to get them back?
Matthew, we know that there's no mechanically derived powers in the Legion of Superheroes. You cannot buy your way into the Legion of Superheroes. You must have one unique power to get into the Legion of Superheroes. You have to be under the age of 18 to get into the Legion of Superheroes. But once you're in, what happens if you lose your powers?
They drum you out and put your stuff in a box.
That's what happens when Sun Boy's powers finally go kaput in this issue. He flew too close to the sun and his powers burned out.
To the sun, boy.
Yeah. And not only that, you're right. When they drum him out, they're like, well, you don't have powers. You're not a member. See ya. Get out. Like now. Goodbye. We're waiting. Why aren't you gone yet?
Take your nameplate and figurine.
That's basically what it is, right?
Keep your head and arms inside the mixer at all times. Get your stuff out of your locker. And then, we wish you well in your future endeavors.
And then,
Sun Boy.
And then Sun Boy goes home and he's like, well, gee, I sure miss my friends. I guess I'll turn on the TV to watch what they're doing. And he sees Superboy and Ultra Boy and Cosmic Boy all having an adventure together. And then there's a knock on his door. And it's like, yeah, I'm Chuck Tane. Maybe you remember me from Legion of Superheroes when you used to be a member.
You sent me to take back the porta monitor that you're clearly
you didn't give back the TV. You got to give it back now. I mean, it's really
TV. That contract is in the Legion's name.
This is not the first time, because even during the Wade Kitson run, I remember that there was at least one member who had lost his powers, and they were basically like, "Your powers don't come back. You're out of here." And that went on for about an issue or two of what am I going to do without my powers? And then the person got their powers back and were able to get back into the team.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, in the future, having a superpower is a thing. And many of them just have the powers of their people, but even they have them at unusual levels and unusual abilities. And what it really breaks down to is, in some ways, it's kind of a cheat, because you know what Ultra Boy's unique power is?
He can see through lead.
He can see through lead. Do you know what Supergirl's unique power is?
She is a girl.
Exactly. See, I think she actually has the ability to withstand more pain, because female bodies are able to withstand more pain.
It's never really explained. I mean, it is explained much further down the line than what we've covered in here, because I know there's an explanation of why Superboy and Supergirl can both be on the team at the same time. And I think it's because they're time displaced. And
the official explanation that I remember is that they made an exception because they are great superheroes of years past.
I thought it was because they're both time displaced, and because they were so busy in their other time periods that they could alternate and never be on the team at the same time.
Sometimes they are, though.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to get to those stories when we get there. So Sun Boy has lost his powers, and he's doing everything he can to get them back. I mean, he's like, throw me in a volcano. I can't stand the smoke. Get me out. Microwave oven me. And that doesn't work. Finally, he does get his powers back from lightning beasts or something?
Flame beast.
Now, this is interesting because is this the first time that we have a character who has two power origin stories?
It's
because wasn't his first time
power?
I know, but I mean, the first time he got his wasn't it his dad who literally locked him in a microwave oven or something?
I don't know how much of it has been revealed at this point, but it's a villain named Dr. Regulus who locks him in an atomic generator heat pram.
And that's how he got his powers.
That is how he got his powers. And
then he lost them in this issue, but he gets them back because he lets a flame beast fry him, essentially. So those are two. It's not a recharge. I mean, he's getting repowered by something totally different.
But it should be noted that he's actually stolen Lightning Lad's origin here, because Lightning Lad got his powers from being zapped by a lightning beast of planet Korbal.
That's right.
Whereas Sunboy is re-empowered by being a flame beast on planet Lerna, which, if you scramble the letters, actually spells Luthor and...
No. Stupid anagrams.
Dang it. Sorry, my brain just rearranged them into something entirely different. But yeah, it is kind of interesting this early in the run to see them, messing with the character. We don't really know a lot about Sunboy. This is his 4th appearance.
Yeah.
I mean, he just got his heat powers, which they make a point of in the very first panels of this story, showing us his powers. Behold, a statue of Sunboy. Oh no, it is falling. I'll use my powers to melt it down. That way you won't be hit by a statue, but in fact by molten metal and burned to death.
I think it is interesting, though, that they're going to a ceremony, and I wonder if the other two, Cosmic Boy and Saturn Girl, I wonder if they know that the statue they're unveiling is of Sunboy, because he's standing there just like, oh yeah, this is going to be a statue of either Saturn Girl or Cosmic Boy. I wonder who it'll be. It's me.
Oh,
he feels like Sally Field on Oscar night.
Yeah, they're actually uncertain of who it's going to be until it happens, and then he immediately has to melt it, and it could be months before they build another statue.
There's actually a very clever, and again, this is Jerry Siegel doing some actual smart storytelling here, where there's this, they're giving tours, or I guess they're accepting gifts. Apparently, if you're a government agent, you're not allowed to accept gifts from anybody. But if you are a teenage superhero and someone wants to shower you with gifts from across the galaxy, totally okay. And,
sure, well, it's strange insects.
Yeah, and so the scientist brings these strange insects to them and says, check out all these crazy insects, man. Check out these lightning bugs. And, oh, by the way, anybody got a light for my cigarette? Because it's perfectly okay to smoke in a government building in the future. Actually,
Sunboy's like,
Legion Clubhouse is not a government building. It's a privately owned building by R.J. Brand. Again, we'll get more into that in the future. But Sunboy's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Let me light you up, dude. And he's like, oh, my powers, they've come back. And that's how he puts two and two together to say, hey, it's these creatures from this planet that are giving me my powers. I will go and let a flame beast light me up.
I love the dialogue. Sunboy, your sun power returned, but only for an instant when I momentarily forgot that I'd lost the power. Like we weren't in the middle of this story as it's happening, but
Well, but it's interesting because when that reveals, he does it so nonchalantly. Let me light your pipe for you, old man. And just lights it. And it almost feels like you're trying too hard it's almost like he's trying too hard to use his powers. Like he had to use his powers to melt the statue. So in essence, if we're going really meta into this, he used his powers to destroy himself. And so therefore that has sunk into his subconscious. So when they're flying home and the city goes dark, and Sunboy's like, well, that's okay. I'll just use my powers to light up the cities until the power comes back on. And he can't. Maybe it's a mental block, and him just nonchalantly reaching over with his finger and sticking it in the pipe to light it up is him, just not thinking about using his power. So there's
That's very Jungian.
Yeah, there's a really cool setup in here that is you're thinking about it too hard, and that's why your powers aren't working. It's all in your head. But no, it's a flame beast of Luma.
Well, Lerna. But yeah, and
Lerna, Luma, same thing. In Helvetica font, when they're too close together and you don't have your kerning right, it looks like Luma.
There's a reason why people are not allowed to be named Clint in comics of this vintage. But yes, and as fascinatingly, as we see more of this future world, Sunboy actually flies off to this world where the creatures are kept because they're Kryptonian flame beasts.
Ah, okay. So are these finish your up, and then I've got another thought then.
This is actually a planet where there are all sorts of, there's a radiation beast and a hypmo beast and probably a dancing really cool beast that would allow you to dance really cool. And I don't know, maybe a memorizing your math homework beast that my child could use.
So you said these were all creatures from Krypton?
The flame beast is from Krypton.
So Flame Bird and Nightwing. Is there a Flame Bird on Lerna?
I don't think so. But the flame beast is blue with wings.
That's interesting. That is very interesting.
And when the flame beast breathes flame on Sun Boy, he returns to being a sun and less of a boy.
Yes, I'm now a sun man.
And now he's going to fight Cranyak.
Well, Cranyak, oh God, what a horrible villain.
Cranyak.
He's just a guy that breaks out of prison and then just goes on a pyromaniac spree.
He has all the powers of a cranberry and all the powers of a yak.
Yeah, and never the two should mix. But Sunboy's experience of trying to get his powers recharged does reveal, again, if you follow all the clues dropped, you get Encyclopedia Brown reveal at the end of every issue. Because when Superboy and Ultra Boy show up, he asks both of them to use their powers to try to recharge him.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't. It doesn't work. And he's trying to figure it out. And then at the end of the issue, he goes, you know what? This isn't the real Superboy or Ultra Boy. And everyone's like, bah? He's like, when I was watching that illegally stolen TV that I'd never gave back, I noticed that when Cosmic Boy used his powers, both Ultra Boy and Superboy were drawn to him. Not because he's sexy, but because they're robots.
They're made of steel.
Yeah.
And this is as good a time
as any. And they
were
filled with hate tapes.
No, these are not powered by hate tapes. These are powered by good tapes. Like, the greatest hits of Bread. This is as good a place to mention this. Silver Age DC has a massive problem when it comes to these Superboy robots and robots with superpowers.
Yeah.
If you can build perfect superhuman robots that cannot be identified up close as robots, why would you not build an army of them and use them to protect the universe? Why would you, if you can create Superman out of tin and springs, a rag of bone and a hank of hair?
And now you're getting into voodoo territory.
Why would you not do that?
So correct me if I'm wrong, which I probably am.
You're wrong.
But I thought during that 5-year later storyline that it was revealed that a lot of the Legion members were actually robots that thought that they were real Legion members, and the real Legion members were off doing something else.
No, I don't recall that. Now, there was the whole thing with the SW6 Legionnaires.
What was the deal with them?
Well, they were at first, they suddenly showed up with a whole cadre of Legionnaires circa Adventure Comics 320 something.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like, wow, these old people who think they're us are crazy. And for a while, they were wondering if they were clones or if they were the original Legion or whatever happened.
Maybe that's the story I'm thinking of. I thought it was way into the 5-year later when they were all old people and stuff. When the universe was coming.
It is the 5-year later story. Yeah, it's right before 0 Hour, which becomes important in the story.
And that's why
I
thought that
robots. They were actually something different.
Oh, okay, because when you asked that question, I was like, well, wait, weren't they robots at one point and nobody knew the difference? Because you're right. Why not just have them protect the universe? And I think it boils down to, 1, free will, and number 2, somebody's going to replace the good tapes with hate tapes.
True.
That or Barry Manilow.
It looks like we made it. Oh,
that's how you know. Those are the hate tapes.
Those are the hate tapes. Those and that Neil Diamond song.
Is there ever a reason? I mean, is there ever a reason or explanation of why? I mean, I agree with you that opening up a closet and seeing just row upon row of Superboy robots in there is creepy as all get out.
Terrifying. I believe the reason why is because we didn't think of it.
I guess. I don't know. There's one more cool thing that I think we need to talk about, Matthew.
Okay.
It's the loving relationship that Ultra Boy, Superboy, and Pete Ross all share.
That is true. In his second full appearance, Ultra Boy is actually entirely absent because he and Superboy have gone back to the 20th century to celebrate Pete Ross's birthday.
Aww. I think Ultra Boy really likes Pete Ross.
Yeah, Pete Ross and Ultra Boy are like buds. They hang out. They watch UFC.
I think that was the reason why there's robots. It's because somebody's celebrating a birthday and they didn't want to miss the meeting.
Yeah, they did. They wanted to make sure that they could be at their Legion meeting and also hang out with their pal Pete with a gigantic cake. And you know what it is? It's Polynesian vanilla, which is even better.
Here's the thing that's wrong with that.
What's that?
It's time travel. They can do both.
No, everything happens right now. Did you notice it's apparently Pete's 14th birthday?
What? Matthew, we have come to the end of another Legion Clubhouse meeting.
Darn it.
What do we learn this week?
We learned that when you love your friends, you're willing to send your robot duplicate to do your actual job so that you can enjoy some nice Polynesian vanilla. We learned that even though all you can do is bounce and make your friends laugh, you can be considered as important as Superman for at least half an issue at a time. And I think we learned that somewhere in the universe there is a beast that will zap you for any and all powers, which means that somewhere there's a decaffeinated coffee beast who is waiting to empower Latte Lad.
I do agree that Adventure Comics 301 really does solidify that anyone can become a Legion member as long as you have the power set for it. With
determination and heart and super plastic fluid.
Yes. All right, everyone. Until next time, I got 20 pounds on Bouncing Boy.
And I'm Microwave King.
Take care.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2017 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.